What are gonna be the real consequences of COVID like in 20 years? In 100 years they will be making memes about how the 20s of each century started with a plague. 20-year-olds rolling their eyes when their parents talk about COVID-19. Kids who are just starting school this year will have a completely different experience for the rest of the school life. IRC There have been studies about the first few foundation years of school being a clear predictor for the rest of your learning life. No idea what will be different. Just that these kids are not going to be like any other cohort of students. I wonder how colleges, universities will be impacted. My college moved all its classes for the next 3 semesters online, and the first question that was asked was, will you be reducing tuition? I think if they don't, a lot of people won't be able to go to college or finish out their degrees. Our history memes is gonna be popping. I'm wondering if more people will move to the burbs. I've always loved my neighborhood in spite of having very little space and a tiny yard. But lately I've wished that we lived somewhere with a bigger yard. With trees, a driveway with a basketball hoop, room for home offices, etc. Especially if telecommuting becomes more common or if kids can't go back to school in the fall. My worry is that more jobs might be pushed abroad to cheaper countries when employers realize jobs can be done remotely. More jobs will become remote as employers realize it's more efficient. A lot of low-paid, essential workers are going to be bitter. Rightfully so. I expect some changes are going to result from that whole situation. Hopefully we will be better prepared for the next inevitable pandemic. The kids of today will be paying financially for this. Companies will start saving money for emergency funds. Then new management will take over and spend all the money meant for emergencies on frivolous poop. An emergency will happen and the employees will suffer again. TBH, humans are such creatures of habit, so we'll inevitably go back to our old ways of not washing hands, going to crowded areas while sick, go on cruise ships, etc. Economically we'll change, but for the most part we'll go back to our carelessness much sooner than 20 years. Our generation will be the silly grandparents wiping down groceries before we put them away. Oh grandpa, you don't have to do that. I lived through COVID-19 back in 2020 and kept you alive. Conspiracy. Or people believing that COVID was just a conspiracy and the millions that died never really existed. I work on a COVID ICU as a nurse. When our patients get discharged from the ICU, many of them will have lasting, if not permanent, conditions from this disease. It's really too early to tell how many survivors will have disabilities and how many will recover 100%. Simply being laid out on a ventilator for 20 to 30 days takes a while to recoup from. Should one suffer strokes, renal damage or impaired lung function, those conditions can follow them for the rest of their possibly shortened lifespan. Having a large number of people suddenly disabled and without employment-tied health insurance in falling economy is going to perhaps be a problem. Surprised I haven't seen anyone mention this so far. We're going to have this noticeable gap in some parts of our cultural library. Some seasons of TV will be cut short. We won't see new TV created during this period. So the next year or two may have seasons postponed or shows cancelled that wouldn't have been. And that's nothing to say of the shows that kept going with massive changes. 20 years from now when people are binge-watching, say, Saturday Night Live, they're going to hit this moment when everything gets really weird. There are movies that got pushed back, shifted to streaming, or might get shelved altogether. There are likely albums that were supposed to be recorded this year that won't. So there will be a gap there. Some video games have already been pushed back and more maybe. On the contrary side, we might see things like books take a bit of an uptick with people being stuck at home and able to write more. paintings, sculptures and other physical art, etc. A huge spike of long-lasting mental illness. The suicide hotlines are up 1000% right now. Being cooped up inside for so long is breaking people down. Unfortunately, the anxiety and depression people are developing will last. The socialization effects of young kids during this time. By the time children are 3 years old, 80% of their brain is wired. Developed to accept love, how to play, how to learn, etc. By age 5, 90% of their brain is wired. All the children who are missing out on a year or more of socialization could have unknown consequences. Strong family ties where they are afraid to leave home. A harder time making new friends. Difficulty socializing. Depression or other mental health issues. Later on in life, I know people think that keeping their 2 or 3-year-old home, even elementary kids, isn't a big deal. But having this time where they are kept inside, and only seeing their parents and siblings is going to affect them in unknown ways 20, 30, 40 years down the road. We're only 2 months into this, so this is all wild-ass speculation. But retail has been teetering on the brink of death for years. And this is going to be the final nail in the coffin for a lot of it. Sure, things are reopening, but people aren't going to be jamming to fill the malls. Major clothing retailers that have a store in every mall might cut back to 1 or 2 per city. A lot of jobs just aren't going to come back. Same with restaurants. A lot of people, especially young people, are realizing how much money you can save cooking at home. A lot of servers aren't getting their jobs back. The economic slump is going to require a lot of stimulus, which means in 20 years, taxes are gonna be crazy. Hopefully it'll encourage people to be more hygienic. One thing I think would need to change is the standard of toilets, bathrooms in bars and pubs. The amount of pubs I've been to where the sinks aren't working or they don't have soap was always a bit inconvenient. But now I think they might be forced to improve it. Some places might need a fairly large-scale renovation to improve their sanitary quality, and that isn't exactly ideal, seeing as they would be struggling for money once they are allowed to reopen. I'm hoping it just becomes another virus that has been cured though, rather than something that causes issues long-term, 5 to 10 years. COVID-19 has held up a mirror, and the reflection is ugly. I truly hope that individuals demand better of their representatives and their employers after this. I work in construction. A lot of different inspections are being done via FaceTime, Skype, and they are very easy to fudge. There will be issues with buildings not being up to code as a result of COVID-19.